Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and we're going to take a look at a group that I have teased in a previous video, but now you can see the whole team all together. This is the Soundwave Spy Patrol 3rd Unit. It's also listed in some areas as the Command Unit. Unlike the retail available Spy Patrols for Soundwave, this is a mail-away exclusive through Hasbro Pulse, and it consists of 4 members. We have Wingthing, Knok, Frenzy, and Skar. Now, of course, these guys are all just repaints of Rumble and Ratbat, with some slight retooling in the cases of a couple of them. But we'll cover that as we take a look at each member individually. This way that older fans can be able to reminisce about the original versions that they may have had growing up, and to allow the newer and younger fans to get an idea as to who these characters are and what their relevance is to the world of the Transformers. So let's get started. Okay, the first one we'll take a look at here is Frenzy. Now, of course, I know some of you from the G1 era might want to argue that this should be Rumble, since he is blue, as he was in the cartoon. But as I have stated both in my G1 Rumble and Frenzy reviews, that if you are to want to buy these from anybody and you ask for them by the name, they're going to give you the name that Hasbro does refer to the toys as. So, the blue cassette is Frenzy. Now, when you get him and take him home, if you want to call him Rumble there, that's your choice and that's your decision. But, for the intents and purposes of this video, this is Frenzy. Of course, Frenzy here is a direct repaint of the Rumble figure that was sold with Ratbat last year in 2019. Of course, I recently reviewed that set due to having recently acquired one of my own, as that set is very, very difficult to obtain. Now, of course, for the history lesson on Frenzy, Frenzy was originally released back in 1984. He was sold in a 2-pack with Laserbeak at the time, and basically served as one of Soundwave's minions. He had mainly the function of a warrior, which meant he was nothing more than your average soldier. However, there is something special about Frenzy in the fact that he is the longest selling cassette figure in the G1 line, because in 1986 he would be reissued and would be sold that time with Ratbat, due to the fact that Laserbeak was retired out, and as they didn't have a second cassette figure to partner with Ratbat, they just kept Frenzy. Of course, early versions of the 1986 release of Frenzy would include gold-colored guns, as you can see here on camera. There are slight differences between the two toys, but the prominent one is that the 1986 version did away with the stickers that you would see on the robot. There are no stickers on the legs, nor does he have a Decepticon insignia on his chest. So in many ways, this little tiny figure here draws more comparisons to his 1984 original, as he does have some nice paint detail on his legs, and they sort of set up to be similar to the design on the sticker here on the original. Although on his chest, Frenzy has some gold paint over the small details, whereas it is silver on the original. This may be an homage to the gold-colored weapons from his later release. Now, of course, to transform Frenzy into his cassette mode, it is a very simple affair, really. You would, well, why don't we first look at his posability before we do that. The head does not move at all. You can raise his arms up to the sides, about so far, and his arms do rotate at the shoulder, all the way. He does not have any elbow joints or bicep swivels. Frenzy can spread his legs apart to do a full splits. He can raise his leg at the hip 90 degrees, and he can also bend his leg at the knee 90 degrees. Now, of course, to transform Frenzy, you would wiggle his arms up at the shoulders so his shoulders touch his head, like that. And you're going to bend the arms at his wrists so they point downward towards his chest. Then you're going to take his legs and rotate them at the swivel on his thighs. Then you will spread the legs out and then fold them up to cover the hands. And then there you would have it. He'd be in his cassette mode. Now, of course, you can also fold down this little tab, and then he becomes an arm-mounted shield. As we have shown on the Siege versions of both Soundwave and Sound Blaster, and to a limited degree on the Earthrise Double Dealer. Now, of course, how does he look compared to his original? Well, let me get him transformed here real quick off camera. Well, there's how one of them looks. They both pretty much would be the same on this side. As you can tell, they went all out more on the original, since they gave a lot of stickers to convince us that he is a micro cassette tape, whereas that seems irrelevant on the modern one. But it still is a nice comparison toy to its original form. Next up we have is Wingthing. And Wingthing here is basically a bright orange repaint of Ratbat, which has become a tradition among the many reissues of this figure over the years. Excluding his G1 version, most every other version of Wingthing that has been released has been a repaint of Ratbat. So it's almost become a tradition. Now, of course, I say excluding the G1 version, because Wingthing was introduced in Generation 1 in 1990. Wingthing was the partner to the Action Master version of Soundwave. While not much detail was given about Wingthing in there, it was said at the end of the tech spec bio that it is hard to tell which of the two characters was despised more by the Decepticons, as Soundwave apparently liked to snoop on his comrades at arms and catch them goofing off instead of doing their jobs. Wingthing, being his partner, was usually sent to be the more discreet version of his spy and catch more minions goofing off and shirking their duties. Excuse me. And of course, this original toy version of Wingthing, of course, he could mount the gun that came with Soundwave, as I've got right here. But all he had for articulation was that he had his wings. This toy has become a chore to find on the secondary market due to the fact that his wings are very easily lost. But of course, back in the day, since he was just an Action Master partner, all he did for transforming, since you couldn't open up Soundwave's chest compartment due to the way the figure was designed, Wingthing just basically became a boosted gun. As we've stated since then, most of the versions of Wingthing have been repaints of Ratbat. So for this version of Wingthing, he does have articulation in the wings, but basically you just flap his wings inward like so, which really doesn't look right. There are 2 joints on his neck, but it does at least allow you to move the head up and down. And of course you can fold up his feet, but that's more for transforming him than it is for anything else. Now to transform Wingthing, you basically have to fold his head up, and this requires both of the double joints in his neck to get it so that his head rests against this back bar behind his head. And then you will fold up his little tiny feet. Then you will collapse the wings against his side, and then fold up the lower portions of his wings and connect them to his body. And then you just turn him around, and Wingthing is an orange cassette. And of course he does have a little post there, so he can also serve as a shield. Quite a world of difference from his original toy. Now we're going to take a look at both Knok and Skar, due to the fact that they were not cassette figures in the original line. For those of you who weren't around or didn't see my recent video on the Earthrise version of Double Dealer, then you missed out on learning that these guys were actually Power Master engines back in the Generation 1 days. In the G1 days, the Power Master was a gimmick done by Hasbro in 1988. It was a rather ridiculous gimmick where the robots would be locked in their vehicle modes unless you used these specific little Power Master figures, fold them up into their engine modes, and then snap them into the proper place. Once in there, it would unlock the transforming mechanism and thus allow the toy to be transformed. Thankfully, Hasbro did have the foresight to mention in the instructions that if you were to somehow lose the Power Master engine, you only needed to press certain buttons on the toy to be able to activate the transformation mechanism, thus preventing kids from ruining the toy by losing these figures. The problem was that the gimmick in reality really wasn't that interesting to begin with, and the lore really didn't go into a lot of detail as to what purpose this really served. A lot of the American lore came from the various comic books and seemed to indicate that, in essence, a Power Master was a human or a Nebulon in some cases that was fitted with a special suit that allowed them to transform into the engine, and then whatever energy we had that was in whoever the person in the suit had could then be transferred into energon that the transformer could use. Sort of like a survival instinct, but one has to wonder what sort of environment would a human or a Nebulon or any other organic being be able to survive in that a transformer could not. As transformers don't need to breathe, and they also have considerably more durable bodies than we do. So the whole idea behind that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. In the Japanese animated series Super God Master Force, they depicted the Power Masters as God Masters, and basically the strength of the willpower inside the person that wore special bracelets could be transferred to a lifeless transector robot, thus allowing you to don this special suit by clanking the wrist bracelets together and shouting Master. You would become outfitted in the engine suit, which you would then transform, plug into the lifeless transector robot body, and then cause it to transform, thus allowing you to become the robot itself. Which was somewhat of a better idea. Still rather silly, but it kind of worked out. Double Dealer in that line was the only one to have two engines, as he had two different alternate modes depending on which faction he was serving, since Double Dealer was a mercenary. If he was outfitted with Knok, Double Dealer would go from a missile trailer to a robot. If he was outfitted with Skar, the missile trailer would transform into a falcon. Now, to talk a little bit about these characters, we'll separate them a bit. Knok here was the Autobot member for Double Dealer. And while he mainly did serve with the Autobots, Knok was more in it for the money. So, he really didn't follow the ideals as well as he should have. He was out to profit. So naturally, when he was bound to Double Dealer, he's mainly in it for the money, or whatever he can get from Double Dealer. As it said in the More Than Meets the Eye guides, that Double Dealer keeps Knok and Skar operating out of separate offices, and he does not tell them about where he is when he's not with them. That way, if they happen to be captured by the enemy, they can't give away any other information. Now, of course, this version of Knok is a repaint of Rumble, but also a slight retooling. As you'll take a look here, his head is done up in a different style, kind of looking like a battle suit of sorts, as the faceplate is all one solid color and does not really depict any sort of facial features. It is, of course, intended to resemble somewhat how the original is done, but it also seems to pay homage to how that was set up, how it's set up. Now, of course, the way Knok transforms is somewhat similar. But of course, Knok here in G1 form transforms the same way every other Power Master figure like him would. As you can see there, he becomes a little engine. The modern Knok basically transforms and has the same articulation as what Frenzy did. So, kind of no real need to show you the articulation since it's the same, but we'll go through the transformation anyways, just so you can see it. And you can see now that Knok becomes a little cassette. But he does have enough of the color scheme present from his original engine. So that's kind of cool. It's nice they carried that over. Get them out of the way, and we'll bring out Skar here. Skar, of course, was the Decepticon member for Double Dealer. And Skar was described as a loyal and fanatical Decepticon. So, he pretty much didn't care what was going on, but more than likely he probably enjoyed not being on the front lines all the time, or having to take orders from some of the various other characters. Now, while Skar turns Double Dealer into a falcon, you can see that he looks more like a bat in this form, and that kind of works well since he's in the modern form, he's a retool of Ratbat. As you can see, he has a different head. And of course, I think that head is intended to try to mimic the original. And it does a fairly decent job. It isn't perfect, but it does do a fairly decent job of the mimicry. The only real downside is they really didn't go trying to match the colors too well. But I do think the new one's colors look a little better. The purple is a little bit darker and a little closer to what you would expect out of a Decepticon. And the yellow on his belly is a little more subdued. Whereas here on the original, it's kind of garishly standing out. Of course, Skar transforms differently into his engine mode. And like we said earlier, since Skar here, the new Skar, is a repaint of Ratbat, he would have the same way of transforming and articulation as Ratbat and Wingthing. And he becomes a cassette. But he has a little better detail. And it looks like they also tried to paint in some more of the detail effects, which, as you can see, weren't really done on the original toy. So that in and of itself is a nice improvement. A couple more things I'd like to show off to you all before we close out on this. And of course, the first thing I want to show you is the box that they came in. Of course, they're shipped in a different box, but they do come in this box here. Of course, here on the front has the label, Spy Patrol 3rd Unit. What I like about it is the details on the inside of the box. You know, we get the cassette tape, obvious reference to a cassette tape from the 1980s. A sure treat for us old school fans. Of course, you got the B side, which is done up as clear, so you can see the tape inside. That's kind of a neat little throwback. If nothing else, for many of you old school fans, it'll give your kids something to ask you about. Go ahead and exaggerate; they ain't gonna listen to you anyway. They'll just think we're old relics. And then, of course, there's the instructions. It would have been nice if these would have been in color to help make sure that modern fans would know who's who. Because otherwise you may have had a hard time. But at least the drawings are pretty spot on. But the thing I want to point out here is Hasbro made a mistake in the fact that they list Knok as a Decepticon. Knok was not a Decepticon in the original continuity. Knok was an Autobot. And the website page that holds these toys lists Knok properly as an Autobot. But of course, there's something I want you all to take notice of. As you can see here on their chests, Frenzy has a little tiny Decepticon symbol. Knok has no symbol. Same thing here. Skar, if we move his head, Wingthing, has a Decepticon symbol. Skar has no symbol. So it's kind of playing off on the fact that Wingthing and Frenzy are true Decepticons, whereas Knok and Skar, technically under this new continuity, are mercenaries, as they serve with Double Dealer, and Double Dealer technically is a mercenary in this new continuity, especially if you've seen the trailer for the upcoming Netflix Earthrise cartoon. Optimus even mentions that to Double Dealer, noticing that he does not have a faction insignia, which Double Dealer tells him, out here, there are no factions. So, might lead to something interesting, but it also leads me to wonder if Knok and Skar will play any significant role with Double Dealer. I won't know for sure unless I find a way to watch it for free, as I do not take Netflix. But then again, I also heard there was a lot of harsh criticisms about the Siege cartoon, and from what little I saw, I can agree with some of it. But time will tell. Anyway, we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of the Spy Patrol 3rd unit? This is actually one of the units I actually liked out of this set. I didn't think I would like it as much when it was first advertised, and it did take me a while to break down to buy them. But of course, as I knew I would want them for Double Dealer for his review, I knew I would eventually have to break down and buy them. And to my surprise, I actually like them. It's nice to see the inclusion of smaller, lesser-known characters from the Generation 1 line, as many of these smaller guys really didn't get released in time to get a lot of media attention. The Power Masters had been released late in the run. By the time they came out, the cartoon was no longer being aired here in America. So all we had was the Marvel comic, and I really didn't read that enough as a child, so I can't really tell you how they appeared in it. And Wingthing, unfortunately, has the reputation of he was an Action Master partner. And again, he really didn't get a lot of attention. He's kind of been pushed to the wayside. But then again, you also look at Frenzy. Frenzy may have been the longest one of the cassettes on the shelves, but he really didn't get covered much in the cartoon. All he was just a duplicate of Rumble. And when you read the bio, he and Rumble are not exactly the same in the slightest. I mean, yeah, they both have a similar ability, but they transfer it differently. Rumble was the one that famously used the pile drivers. Frenzy should not have used the pile drivers, as his way of channeling quakes was more of a sonic attack. So, unfortunately, they went cheap on that and just decided to make it the same. I don't know why, but that just seemed to be how it was. But it is, like I said, it is nice to see these guys get a new chance to shine, and hopefully gain some new fans. And maybe a chance to make new history. Only time will tell. But at any rate, that's my review of the Soundwave Spy Patrol 3rd Unit. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please drop me a thumbs up here on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you can join our ranks. Make sure you ring that notification bell, because I'll be trying to post videos as often as I can this month. Also, I ask that you share this video with your friends and fellow Transformer collectors. That's what helps this channel grow. And also share your thoughts about these 4 guys in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.